We feel busier than ever, but it doesn't feel like enough. We're checking boxes, chasing success, and still, there's this quiet sense that time is just slipping away for no real reason. About 2,000 years ago, a Roman philosopher, Seneca, he saw this same struggle. He wrote about it in his letters on the shortness of life. And he said something very clear. He said, "It's not that we have a short time to live, it's that we waste a lot of it." That idea, it cuts right through all the noise we have now. This isn't about failure, it's more like a mirror. What we're going to do is walk through 20 signs, subtle signs from Stoic wisdom, that you might be misdirecting your resource. Your most precious one, your life. These aren't condemnations, they're clues. Each one is a chance to correct your course, a step toward living with purpose. So, through the eyes of a Stoic sage, what does a wasted life actually look like? Your mind tends to wander. It goes back to the past, or it jumps ahead to the future. You're either replaying things you can't change, or you're rehearsing things you can't control. Seneca called that a kind of theft. He said fools are busy with time they don't own. They're weighed down by regret, or they're frozen by anxiety. The Stoic idea isn't to ignore the past or the future. It's to anchor yourself, to put your attention, your energy, your life into the only time you actually have, which is right now, this moment. You can see it in someone planning a trip. They spend months on the details, picturing the perfect beach, but then they can't just sit in their own living room in the evening with a book is already on that beach, so the present feels dull. It feels like not enough. They're trading what's real for a phantom. Their life becomes a waiting room, always waiting for the next thing, and in that constant waiting, the substance of the day just evaporates. So there's a question. What's one thought, one regret, or one worry that you could choose to put down just for today, not forever, just for this one day, to leave it be, so you can feel the weight of the time you actually own? And the gift of it, your reputation is out of your control. It always has been. That's a freeing idea, but it's also a hard one. What you can control is your character. Your effort, your integrity, those things are yours, but the opinions people have, the applause, the likes, the job titles, those belong to other people. They're external. Epictetus, the Stoic teacher, he drew this line very clearly. He called it the dichotomy of control. What's up to us, our judgments, what we desire, what we do. And what's not up to us, our body, our property, our reputation. To waste your life is to spend your energy on that second list. It's trading your character for a standing ovation that might never even happen. You can think of someone who works for years, late nights, weekends gone, all for a promotion. But if you ask why, the reason isn't about getting better at the work itself or helping the team. It's about the corner office, the title on the door, the respect they think it will bring. They're pouring their days, their finite time, into a bucket with a hole in the bottom. Because the moment they get that title, their mind just jumps to the next one. The applause fades and they need more of it. It's a hunger, and you can't ever satisfy that hunger with external things. The work becomes just a means to an end, and the end, it's a phantom. So here's a quiet question. Where in your life are you working for the applause? Is it at your job, waiting for your manager's praise? Is it online, refreshing for notifications? What would happen if, for just one project, you made the work itself the goal? Not the result, not the recognition, but the quality of your focus, the integrity of your effort. That shift from seeking validation to building virtue, that's where you get your time back. That's where you stop trading it for the opinions of others. What does it mean to really unwind, not just to kill time, but to actually restore yourself? That gap matters. It's where life can just sort of drain out. The Stoics, they enjoyed things, a good meal with friends, the beauty of nature, learning something new. Their warning was about becoming a passive consumer of easy pleasure. Seneca talked about prisoners of luxury. He saw that chasing constant comfort, that next easy hit, it weakens you. It makes you soft, it trains you to run from anything slightly difficult or boring, and life has difficulty, it has boredom, so you get into this cycle. You feel a slight discomfort, a moment of quiet, and you reach for your phone, you scroll, you stream, you consume something to make that feeling go away. That's not relaxation, that's anesthesia. It's a numbing pleasure. Think about an endless streaming binge. You're not engaging, you're not creating, you're not even really resting. You're just being carried along by a river of someone else's stories. Hours vanish. You've traded your agency, your attention for a passive experience. And it leaves you more drained than when you started. The pleasure was empty. It didn't fill you up. It just distracted you from the reality of your own life. For a little while, so try a simple audit. Pick one habitual pleasure, maybe that social media scroll right before bed, or automatically turning on the TV the moment you walk in. Ask yourself, does this habit serve my growth? Does it restore my energy? Or does it just distract me from something I might not want to feel? The answer isn't to never watch a show again. It's to choose it consciously, instead of having it choose you, because a life spent fleeing discomfort, that's a life spent in a very small cage, a very comfortable one. The perfect conditions are a myth. We tell ourselves we'll start when we have more time, more money, more confidence. It's a promise we make, and it's a promise that steals our days. Seneca saw this. He wrote that we suffer more often in imagination than in reality. The fear of starting, the anxiety about how hard it will be, the picture of failure, that pain is manufactured in our own minds. It's a phantom, but it feels so real it paralyzes us. So we postpone. We say we're waiting for the right moment, but what we're really waiting for is courage to magically appear. Procrastination, from a Stoic view, is a failure of courage. It's a misunderstanding of time's value. Seneca said to postpone your plans is to postpone life itself. You're saying, I will live later, but later is not a guarantee. It's a hope, and to bank your entire life on a hope is to waste the currency you have in your hand right now. Think of the person who dreams of writing a book. They have the idea, they feel the pull, but they wait. They wait for a quiet month for inspiration to strike. They tell themselves they're not a real writer yet, so the days pass filled with other, smaller tasks. The blank page stays blank. Their life, the substance of it, is happening in the waiting room, not in the act of creation. They're waiting for motivation, but motivation follows action. It doesn't precede it. The disciplined act of sitting down and writing one sentence, that's what creates momentum. That's what proves to your own mind that you are, in fact, a writer. The courage isn't in the feeling, it's in the doing despite the feeling. So here's a direct challenge. Name one thing, one important task, one meaningful project, one conversation you've been postponing. Don't make it grand, make it specific. Now, what's the very smallest, most immediate first step you could take toward it? Not the whole journey, just the first 5 minutes. Could you open a document and write a title? Could you send a one-line text to schedule a coffee? Could you research one single course? That first step is a declaration. It tells your fear that you're moving anyway. It reclaims a piece of your time from the imagination of suffering and plants it firmly in the reality of action. That's how you stop postponing your life, one small, courageous step at a time. Security feels solid, but it's an illusion. We want our jobs to stay the same, our relationships to last, our health to hold. The Stoics saw something else. They saw a law of nature. Everything changes, everything is moving. To fight, that is to exhaust yourself in a battle you can't win. Marcus Aurelius wrote about this. He pictured time as a river carrying everything away. To resist change is to resist the universe itself. It's not just accepting loss when it happens. It's understanding that change isn't the exception, it's the rule. The fear we feel, it's not really about the change. It's a fear that we can't handle it. We don't trust our own resilience. A door closes and we freeze because we can't picture the next room. That lack of trust, that's where the waste is. We pour energy into propping up a situation that's already ended. We stay in a stifling job, not for the work, but for the illusion of safety. We cling to a relationship that's over because the known pain feels safer than the unknown possibility of being alone. We're trying to build a fortress in the middle of the river, and the water keeps rising. Think of someone offered a new role, a step up but in an unfamiliar field. The old job is comfortable, they know the routines. The new one is a mystery. It requires learning, it carries risk. The anxiety isn't about the new job's potential. It's about the death of the old identity, the comfortable, known self. They're mourning a version of themselves that has to change, and in that mourning, they might say no. They choose the known stagnation over the uncertain growth. That's a trade, trading potential for a phantom of security. So pause, look back at a change you resisted. A shift in a friendship, a new responsibility, a change in routine. What was the core of your resistance? Was it about the new circumstance or the loss of the old one? What did clinging to that old way cost you? In energy, in peace? And what, even in a small way, did the change eventually teach you about your ability to adapt? The river flows, you can't stop it, but you can learn to swim. You can learn to read its currents, and then you stop wasting strength fighting the water and start using it to move. Seneca called anger a temporary madness. He wrote that in on anger. It's a fire that burns the person holding it, not the person it's aimed at. To hold a grudge is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to get sick. You're carrying a burning stone in your pocket every day. The waste is huge. You're spending your mental energy, your peace, your present moment on something in the past you can't change. The Stoics had a radical view here. They said other people's actions don't reflect your worth. They reflect that person's own judgments, their ignorance, their own struggles. When someone insults you, they're acting from a flawed belief. They think acting that way will help them somehow. That's their error. To take their error and turn it into your lasting suffering, that's making their problem your permanent home. Seneca had a piercing thought. He said we're often hurt more by our reaction to an offense than by the offense itself. The original slight might have lasted a minute. But the resentment, replaying the scene in your head, the bitter imaginary arguments that can last years, that's where you lose your life, not in the moment of conflict, but in all the moments you give up to reliving it. Think of a common office slight. A colleague takes credit for your idea. The meeting ends in 5 minutes, but you carry it home. You replay it at dinner. You draft the perfect comeback in the shower. You lose sleep building your case. For days, your focus is split. Your creativity fades. All your mental space is taken up by a private courtroom where you're both the wronged plaintiff and the angry judge. Meanwhile, the colleague has probably forgotten. They're living their life, and you're paying for their mistake with your time, your attention, your peace. You bear the whole cost, so here's a quiet question. What's one grudge you're carrying? It doesn't have to be a huge betrayal. It could be a lingering irritation with family, a bitterness toward an old friend, a simmering resentment at work. Name it to yourself, then ask a different question, not whether they were right or wrong, but what this resentment is costing you right now, what it feels like in your body. What lightness it blocks, and what it would feel like not to excuse what they did, but to consciously, deliberately, let go of your claim on this particular pain. To set down that burning stone, you're not saying what they did was okay. You're saying your life is too valuable to spend another day burning in a fire they started long ago. That act of letting go isn't for them, it's taking back your own stolen time. Your calendar is full, but you feel light. That's the paradox now. We think motion is progress. The Stoics made a distinction between being occupied and being engaged. Seneca observed the powerful men in Rome, always moving, surrounded by petitioners, papers. He said they were busy with other people's affairs. Their own lives went unattended. That's the shield, busyness. It's easier to answer 100 emails than to answer one hard question. The question of what matters to you. The constant doing creates a noise, and the noise drowns out the quiet voice, the voice asking if this is the right direction. Motion feels like purpose, but often it's avoidance, a way to feel productive without risking the vulnerability of actual creation. Think about a work week. Back-to-back meetings, a flooded inbox, notifications, Friday comes, you're exhausted. You've been in motion for 40 hours, but look back, what did you actually build? What did you create that wouldn't exist without you? How many of those meetings were necessary, and how many were just ritual, the admin tasks, the reports that get filed and forgotten? The endless communication about the work instead of the work itself. It's a treadmill, you're running, you're sweating, but you're not moving toward a destination you chose. You're just keeping up. Seneca's critique was precise. He wrote that being industrious isn't enough, not if you're industrious about the wrong things. The key is alignment. Does this activity align with your core goals, with your values, with what you define as a life well lived, or is it just a leaf blown into your path? And you're spending your day sweeping leaves, so take a quiet moment. Look back at your last 7 days, not with judgment, with curiosity. Identify one recurring busy activity. Maybe it's that weekly status meeting, the one that never changes anything. Maybe it's the compulsive social media check, the one that fragments your focus. Now, what's one meaningful action you could put in its place? Could you use that 30 minutes to read a chapter of a book that expands your mind? Could you take a walk without your phone, just to notice the world? Could you draft the first paragraph of that idea you've been carrying? The shift isn't about doing more, it's about doing what counts, trading empty motion for a single step, a step that actually moves you forward. When was the last time you just sat in silence with your own thoughts? Not planning anything, not worrying, just observing. There's all this noise in the day, this constant stream of information. It creates a kind of static. And in that static, your life can just happen to you. You react, you respond, but you aren't really choosing. That's the heart of the 8th sign. Neglecting self-reflection is like sailing without checking your compass. You might be moving fast, but you have no idea if you're headed toward your destination or further out to sea. The Stoics didn't see this as a luxury. They saw it as a non-negotiable duty, the most important meeting of your day, the one with yourself. Marcus Aurelius, the Emperor of Rome, he left us the perfect example. His personal writings, now called Meditations, were never meant for publication. They were his nightly review, a conversation with his own soul. In them, he questioned his anger, his judgments, his impulses. He reminded himself of his values. He wasn't just thinking about his day, he was aligning it, taking the raw material of his experiences and shaping it into wisdom. That practice turns life from a series of accidents into a work of art. You become the sculptor of your own character. Now contrast that with how most of us end our day. We're exhausted, we reach for the phone, we scroll, we consume one more episode. It's a numbing ritual, a way to signal to the brain that the work of thinking is over. But in that switch from active doing to passive consuming, we miss the crucial step, the step of meaning making. A scroll through social media shows you other people's curated highlights. A few minutes of journaling shows you your own raw material, your reactions, your small victories, your subtle failures, the gap between what you intended and what you actually did. That gap is where growth lives. It's not about guilt, it's about data. So here's a direct, simple challenge. Tonight, before you reach for that screen, give yourself 2 minutes. Just 2, sit quietly, ask yourself one question. What did I learn today? Not what did I do? What did I learn? Maybe you learned that a certain conversation drains your energy. Maybe you learned you're more patient than you thought in a frustrating moment. Maybe you learned you avoided a difficult task and felt worse for it. This isn't a performance review. It's a discovery, reclaiming those scattered moments and weaving them into something you can use tomorrow. That 2-minute pause is how you stop your life from happening to you. And start happening to it. You're living someone else's life. It's subtle, it's everywhere. You're following a script you didn't write. Your parents' expectations, your culture's definition of success. This invisible checklist society hands you. The Stoics called that living contrary to your own nature. And your nature, it's not about being selfish. It's about aligning with your own reason, your own capacity for virtue. Epictetus said it bluntly: if someone tells you a person speaks ill of you, don't make excuses. Just answer, he was ignorant of my other faults. Otherwise, he wouldn't have mentioned only these. That's a shift. It moves the focus from defending your image to examining your own character. The disturbance comes from caring more about their script for you than your own judgment. There's a difference between being prosocial, contributing, and being a prisoner of external validation. One comes from internal strength, from choice. The other is a reaction, a fear of disappointing the audience. Think of someone who becomes a lawyer because their family is full of lawyers. It's the expected path. It carries prestige, but every day in the courtroom feels like wearing a costume. Their real passion might be teaching, or woodworking, or environmental science. And yet they stay. They trade their authentic engagement for the security of the family script. They're living a life of should. I should be successful in this way. I should have this kind of house, this car, by this age. Each should is a line from someone else's play, and you're performing it while your own story goes untold. The courage here isn't rebellion for its own sake. It's the quiet, disciplined courage of self-examination, to sit and ask, what do I value, not what was I taught to value. What brings me a sense of meaning that's independent of applause? That's defining your own virtue. So here's a prompt. Identify one should in your life right now. A small one, maybe. I should go to that social event I dread. I should stay late at work to look dedicated. I should pursue that certification because it's the next logical step. Now question it gently. Where did this should come from? Whose voice does it sound like? And what would happen if, just this once, you replaced it with a could? I could go to the event, or I could have a quiet evening that truly restores me. I could stay late, or I could leave on time and trust the quality of my work. This isn't about discarding all responsibility. It's about moving from a life of reaction to a life of choice, reclaiming the authorship of your own days. One question should at a time. Growth isn't in the comfort zone. That's true for your body and for your mind. The easy path feels safe, but it wears you down over time. It makes you fragile. The Stoics had a name for this, ascesis. It wasn't about hurting yourself, it was training, like an athlete lifting weights, not to get injured but to get stronger for the game. The point was to show yourself you could handle difficulty, that your well-being didn't rely on everything being perfect outside. Seneca did this. He was incredibly wealthy, but he'd sometimes live like he was poor. Simple clothes, plain food, a hard bed. He did it to remember he could, to cut those invisible chains of dependency. He wrote that it meant he was never a prisoner of his fortune. He could enjoy it, but he didn't need it. That's voluntary discomfort. It's not masochism, it's freedom. It's taking a small, controlled risk with your comfort to prove to your own system that you're tougher than your fears. Today, it's not about giving everything away. It's the small, daily choices that build that same muscle. Choosing the cold shower for the last 30 seconds, not because you like it, but to practice sitting with a sensation you don't enjoy. Fasting from screens for a full day, to face the quiet and the boredom you usually avoid. Having that difficult conversation you've put off and staying in the awkwardness instead of running. Each one is a vote for your own resilience. It tells your brain that discomfort isn't an emergency, it's just information, and you can handle information. Think about someone who never moves. Their muscles get weak, a single flight of stairs leaves them winded, their world gets smaller, limited to what's easy to reach. The same thing happens to your character. If you always pick the easiest conversation, the most distracting entertainment, the most convenient food, your resilience weakens. Then when life brings a real challenge, a loss, a setback, a conflict you have nothing to draw on, you haven't practiced, you've only practiced avoiding. So the invitation this week is straightforward. Pick one small, voluntary discomfort, just one. It could be leaving your phone in another room for an hour after work, or taking a longer route on your walk, or speaking up in a meeting when you'd normally stay quiet. The size doesn't matter, the intention does. You're not looking for pain. You're running an experiment. You're asking your spirit, are you still there? And you're listening for the answer, which is always a quiet, firm yes. Indecision is a betrayal of yourself. You're standing at a crossroads. You have the map. You just won't take a step. Seneca saw this. He said a man who suffers before it's necessary suffers more than he needs to. The mind that wavers, stuck in analysis, ends up feeling the pain of every path at once. That's the real cost. It's not about choosing wrong. It's about giving up your power to choose. For the Stoics, our highest gift is reason, and reason isn't for endless speculation. It's for judgment, then action. To be indecisive is to let that inner spark go unused. It's to treat your own judgment as unreliable. You're waiting for a guarantee the world won't give. Seneca argued a wrong action taken with courage and later corrected is better than no action. At least you're living, you're engaging, you're collecting real data, not just theoretical fears. The crossroads isn't the problem, it's your refusal to leave it. So how do you move when nothing's certain? The Stoics had a tool, the reserve clause. You act with full intention, your best judgment, and you add a silent phrase. Fate permitting or God willing, you commit to the action but you release the exact outcome. You decide to apply for the job. You do your absolute best on the application. And you understand the hiring decision isn't yours to make. You ask the difficult question phrased with care, while accepting the answer may not be what you hope. This clause isn't a cop-out, it's a liberation. It frees you to act decisively without the weight of demanding a specific result from a world you don't control. Think of someone offered a promotion that means moving. The pros and cons list is even. The family is unsure. The what-if loops start. What if the new city is lonely? What if I fail in the bigger role? What if I regret leaving? Months pass in that suspended state. Their energy goes into mentally simulating two different lives, while their actual life in the present city becomes a ghost town. They're not really there anymore. They're watching their own stagnation. The opportunity might fade, or worse, they decide by default by letting the deadline pass. That's how life gets wasted, not in a dramatic failure, but in the quiet erosion of possibility by hesitation. So here's something direct. Name one decision you've been putting off. It doesn't have to change everything. It could be joining a class, having a hard conversation, starting a side project. Now, set a firm deadline, not someday. A specific day and time this week to choose. When that moment comes, use your best available judgment. Make the call, then attach your reserve clause. Do your part fully and leave the outcome to the logic of the world. This simple act, choosing a path and walking it, is how you take your agency back from the tyranny of what if. It's how you stop paying for the same crossroads over and over with your days. If your house was on fire, the first thing you'd grab, that answer tells you what owns you. Not the other way around. Seneca saw a direct link. The more we cling to things, the more we create our own jailers. Every valuable object we over-identify with becomes a source of fear. Fear of damage, fear of theft, fear of loss, and that fear is a tax. It's a quiet, constant payment. You pay with your peace for the illusion of security an object provides. The Stoic view here is radical and it's freeing. Possessions are indifferent. They're neither good nor bad in themselves. They're tools. A hammer can build a house or break a window. Its moral value comes from how it's used. The problem isn't owning things. It's when the thing owns you. When your sense of self, your happiness, your status gets wrapped up in an external object. That's when you trade your inner freedom for a very fragile anchor. Seneca put it perfectly. He wrote, "A man is not poor by what he lacks, but by what he craves." Poverty, in this sense, is a state of endless wanting. It's the feeling that you are incomplete without that next acquisition. You can see this in the anxiety that arrives with a new luxury item. A pristine car, suddenly a parking lot is a field of threats. A shopping cart is a potential enemy. A rainy day isn't just weather, it's a risk to the finish. The object was meant to serve you, to provide joy or convenience, but now you are serving it. Your mind is preoccupied with its protection. Your freedom of movement is constrained by worry. The thing has become your master, and you volunteered to be its anxious guardian. This applies far beyond cars. It could be the latest phone, a designer outfit, a perfectly curated home. The moment its preservation causes you more stress than its use brings you benefit, the balance has tipped. You are no longer using a tool. You are maintaining an idol. So here's a quiet experiment. Look around your living space. Identify one possession you feel an unusual attachment to, something whose loss or damage would genuinely disturb your peace. Now for a moment, practice mental detachment. In your mind, picture it being gone, not through a dramatic disaster, but simply gone, given away or broken or just no longer there. Observe the feeling that arises, the tightness, the resistance. That feeling is the boundary of your attachment. The practice isn't to actually give it away right now. It's to consciously loosen the mental grip, to remind yourself that your worth, your character, your capacity for joy exists independently of this object. It is a thing you have, not a thing you are. Each time you do this, you reclaim a little piece of your mind from the fear of loss. You stop paying the anxiety tax. And you start to experience what Seneca meant. That true wealth isn't an abundance of possessions, but a poverty of craving. A ship without a port just drifts. It goes wherever the wind pushes it. That's the feeling a reactive life. One problem, then another. One demand, then the next. There's no deeper current pulling you forward. The Stoics called this drifting, and their answer was telos, a purpose, but it's not about some grand destiny. It's more practical than that. For a Stoic, your purpose is to live with virtue. To act with wisdom, courage, justice, temperance. In every situation, that's your port. That's the star you sail by. It turns random events into a coherent story. Your story, the cosmic perspective, was meant to clarify this. We're a small part of a vast whole. Our role isn't to be the center, it's to play our part well. To contribute our note. Without that guiding principle, you're a weather vane, spinning with every shift in opinion, every trend, every setback or piece of praise. Your energy scatters. You solve problems, but you don't build anything lasting. You're building on sand, no blueprint. Think of two people at work. The first is in pure reaction mode. Their day is a checklist, emails to answer, meetings to attend, fires to put out. They're efficient, they're busy, but if you ask what they're building toward, the answer is vague. A promotion, maybe, or just getting to Friday. Their life is a series of tasks, not a narrative. The second person has a simple mission. It might be to bring clarity to complex situations, or to help my team feel capable. Their same tasks, the emails, the meetings get filtered through that lens. They choose which fires to put out based on the mission. They say no to distractions that don't align. Their days have a through line, a direction. They're the captain, not just a passenger fighting the waves. So here's a prompt. It's simple, but it requires honesty. Take a quiet moment. Write down your 3 or 4 core values, not what they should be, what they actually are. What principles, when you live by them, make you feel aligned, at peace? Is it integrity, curiosity, compassion, resilience? Write them down. That list is your compass. Then tomorrow, keep it in mind. Let it filter your smaller decisions. A request comes in, ask, does this align with my values? A conflict arises, ask, what would a courageous and just response look like here? This daily alignment, moment to moment, is how you build a purposeful life, not in one dramatic leap, in 1,000 small, consistent choices. The port isn't a place you arrive at someday. It's the quality of the sailing right now. The weather is bad, traffic is a mess, the political climate feels impossible. That low-grade protest against reality, it drains your attention. Your most limited resource, the 14th sign of a misdirected life, is complaining about circumstances, not the kind that solves a problem, the futile kind. The kind that just resists what is. The Stoics saw this as a fundamental error. You're arguing with reality, and reality always wins. Epictetus drew a line. Some things are up to us, our opinions, our impulses, our desires, our own actions. Other things are not up to us, our body, our property, our reputation. The weather, the traffic, what other people think. To complain about that second list is to fight a battle you can't win. It's shaking your fist at the rain. You get wet and you look foolish. The serenity prayer captures it. Grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change. Courage to change the things I can. Wisdom to know the difference. That wisdom is the pivot. It's where you stop wasting fuel on protest and start channeling it into your sphere of influence. Take a difficult work environment, a micromanaging boss, a toxic culture. Someone spends every coffee break, every evening cataloging the injustices. The boss's tone, the unfair workload, the policies. That complaining feels like release, but it's a cage. It reinforces victimhood. It trains the mind to look for more evidence of the problem, blinding them to solutions or exits. Their energy goes into describing the prison bars, not into looking for the key or starting to dig. The Stoic approach is a clear-eyed assessment. What is truly within my control here? I can't control my boss's personality. I can control the quality of my work. I can control my preparation for meetings. I can control my response to criticism, listening for useful feedback, not reacting to tone. I can control my decision to update my resume, to explore the market. The complaining person focuses on the uncontrollable. That leaves them feeling powerless, drained. The Stoic focuses on the controllable. That reclaims their agency. Their energy, the circumstance might not change immediately, but their experience of it transforms completely. So a practical challenge for one full day, a complaint fast. Externally and internally, the moment you feel that surge of grievance about the rain, the delayed train, the rude comment, pause, ask the question, is this within my control? If it is, what's one small, constructive action? If it isn't, practice a simple acceptance, a quiet thought. This is the reality of this moment. My peace is too valuable to trade for a protest against the weather. This isn't about becoming passive. It's about becoming strategic. You stop leaking your life force into the void of protest. You start investing it in the soil of your own agency. You might notice the quiet that descends and the clarity that emerges in its place. Boredom isn't something you have to defeat. It's more like an invitation. And the 15th sign is how fast we say no to that. We look for constant entertainment, not really for joy, but to escape our own thoughts. Seneca noticed this poverty of mind. He said people are afraid to be alone with themselves. They fill every silence with noise, every empty space with some distraction. They have plenty of diversions, but very little self-knowledge. This isn't about enjoying a movie or a concert. It's about that automatic reach for stimulation the moment things get quiet. The elevator ride, the commercial break, the 3 minutes waiting for coffee. That little pocket of solitude feels like a vacuum, and we rush to fill it. We pull out the phone, we scroll, we tap, we consume. We do anything except just be present with the person we'll spend our whole life with ourselves. The Stoic view is that boredom is a threshold. It's that uncomfortable space between activities where creativity could come up or reflection. When you kill that space instantly, you're treating a potential doorway like a threat. You're teaching your mind to fear its own company. Seneca put it well. He said you have to retreat into yourself as often as you can, because conversation with good people, he wrote, creates nourishment. But conversation with yourself, that creates riches. Stillness is where you digest what's happened to you, where you separate the event from what it meant, where you hear your own voice under all the noise of the world. Think about the last time you stood in a slow line, at the grocery store or the bank or the airport. Look at the posture. Almost every head is bowed, a soft blue glow on every face. It's a collective agreement to be anywhere but here, and in that shared escape, a real opportunity gets lost. The chance to notice the architecture of the room, to overhear a piece of conversation, to feel your own breath, to just be a human being existing without an immediate task. That isn't wasted time, that's reclaimed life. So here's a simple challenge. Today, schedule 5 minutes of quiet, not meditation unless you want to. Just solitude. Put your devices in another room. Sit or walk without headphones. Let the boredom come up. Don't fight it. Observe the itch to get up, to check something, to do. Watch it like a wave that rises and then passes. In that small space, you aren't being entertained. You're becoming acquainted. You're rediscovering the riches Seneca talked about. The infinite landscape of your own mind, and you take back those stolen moments, one quiet breath at a time. Plato had this image, the mind as a charioteer, the body as the horses. You can't get where you're going if the horses are weak, or if they're completely wild. That's the 16th sign, ignoring that partnership, neglecting the physical temple you're in. For the Stoics, this wasn't about a perfect body. It wasn't about living forever. It was duty. Your body is the instrument of your will. It's the vehicle for your virtue. Letting it fall apart through neglect or spoiling it through too much comfort, that's sabotaging your own capacity to do good. Marcus Aurelius wrote reminders to himself. He'd tell himself to get out of bed early without complaining because he was made for action, not for lying in bed. He warned against pampering the body. But he also took care of it. He ate simple food, he exercised, he endured the hardships of his military campaigns. That's the Stoic balance, moderation and discipline. Not for vanity, for utility. Your body is a tool. A good craftsman maintains his tools. He doesn't abuse them until they break, and he doesn't just polish them endlessly, never doing any work. The neglect now is often subtle. It looks like productivity. You're too busy for a full night's sleep because of an important project. You skip meals. Or you eat whatever's fastest because your time is too valuable. You sit for 10 hours straight, your mind racing, while your body just stiffens and aches. That isn't dedication, it's a slow betrayal of the partnership. You're asking the charioteer to drive on while the horses are starving and exhausted. The mind can't be clear if the body is fogged with fatigue. Your judgment won't be sharp if your blood sugar is crashing. Your patience will be thin if you're in constant, low-grade discomfort from not moving. The body sends signals: tiredness, hunger, stiffness, stress. To ignore them is like ignoring the dashboard lights in your car. You can keep driving for a while. But a breakdown is inevitable, and when it comes, it will demand all the time you thought you were saving, and more. So here's a simple prompt. This week, assess one basic physical need. Just one. Is it sleep? Could you commit to turning off screens 30 minutes earlier? Is it movement? Could you take a 20-minute walk, not as exercise but as a gift to your joints and your circulation? Is it nourishment? Could you prepare one simple, wholesome meal for yourself with the intention of fueling your temple? Choose one and treat it not as a chore or a step toward a different appearance. Treat it as an act of respect for the horses that carry you, for the instrument that allows your mind, your character, your virtue to move through the world. That's how you stop wasting life by weakening the very vessel it's lived in. Words have a certain weight to them. We exchange them all day, and usually we don't notice the cost. The 17th sign is how easily we spend them on other people's business. Not in a caring way, but in a judgmental way, or a speculative way, or just a trivial way. It's a subtle kind of drain. You can feel energized after a deep talk about ideas, and you can feel strangely depleted after a long session of gossip, even if it felt entertaining while it was happening. That depletion, that's your energy, your attention, your life, being poured into a container that holds nothing of value. The Stoics were clear on this. Our speech should serve a purpose. It should be an instrument of our virtue. Epictetus had a filter for any remark, a three-part test. Is it true? Is it necessary? Is it kind? If a statement fails any one of those, it's better left unsaid. This isn't about being bland or silent. It's about intentionality. It's about seeing that your words are a resource. And to waste them on gossip is to litter your own character. Gossip, at its core, is a judgment about something outside your control. Another person's choices, their relationships, their mistakes. When you dissect their life at the water cooler or in a group chat, you're doing two things. First, you're training your mind to focus on the external, on the faults of others. That pulls you away from the harder work, the more valuable work of examining your own progress. Second, you're often looking for a cheap form of connection. Bonding over a shared judgment of someone else creates a fragile alliance, a low-trust alliance. It feels like closeness, but it's built on sand. The moment you leave the room, you might become the next subject. Think of a typical office break room. The talk turns to a colleague who's struggling. Did you hear about the mistake in their report? I heard their manager is furious. The speculation starts to flow. Their competence gets questioned. Their personal life might get dragged in. For 10 minutes, the group feels united. But what was built? Nothing, no problem was solved. No one was helped. The only result is a slightly more toxic atmosphere, and 10 minutes of each person's life spent in a small, mean theater of judgment. They traded potential for connection, for learning, for planning, and they traded it for the petty drama of someone else's story. The invitation here is observational, not judgmental. For one day, become an anthropologist of your own speech. Carry a mental notepad. Notice your conversations. How much of what you say is about other people's actions, their choices, their lives? And of that, how much is necessary? How much is kind? How much serves a purpose beyond just filling the air or creating a momentary sense of superiority? You don't need to chastise yourself, just notice the patterns. The goal is awareness, because awareness creates choice. The next time you feel that pull to share a juicy, unverified piece of news about someone, you'll have a moment of pause. In that pause, you can ask Epictetus's questions, and in that space, you might choose a different path. You might change the subject to an idea. You might ask a genuine question about the other person's project. Or you might simply enjoy the quiet. Each time you do that, you reclaim your words. You stop using them as currency in an economy of judgment, and you start wielding them as tools to build something real. That last fear can tint all the others. It's that low hum in the background that makes every risk feel too big, every change too dangerous. The 18th sign is when the fear of the ending stops you from ever really starting the middle. It's the biggest waste of time there is. Seneca had a stark way of saying it. He said, "We die every day. A little bit of our life is taken with each hour that goes by." The person you were yesterday is already gone. The person you are right now will be gone by tonight. That's not meant to be dark, it's meant to be clear. The Stoic idea, memento mori, remembering you will die, was never about creating fear. It was the reverse. It was a tool to cut away what doesn't matter. To place a beautiful, urgent priority onto your days. If you knew this talk was your last one, would you use it to complain about the weather? If you knew this was your final year, would you spend it trying to impress a boss you don't even like? The fear of the end loses its grip when you use the fact of the end as a lens. It pulls what matters into sharp, undeniable focus. That's why Seneca could write, "It's not that we have little time, but that we waste so much of it." The waste happens in the tiny hesitations, the dreams we put off, the energy we give to things that won't matter on a longer scale, all because some part of us is acting like we have forever. We don't, and that's the very thing that gives our choices weight. Take the fear of failure. It's a kind of small death, the death of an idea or a hope or a specific version of yourself you had in mind. Someone has a story inside them, they feel it, but they're scared to write it down. What if it's terrible? What if people mock it? What if I put everything into it and nothing comes of it? That fear of the project dying keeps the story trapped, unwritten, and in that safe, silent space, a piece of that person's possible life passes away day after day. They're choosing the certainty of regret over the risk of making something. Memento mori asks a different question. If not now, then when? If not this story, then what? This moment is the only one you're guaranteed for this purpose. So here's something direct. Find a quiet minute, take a piece of paper, and write down your answer to this. If I learned for certain that my time was truly limited, not in a scary way, but in a clarifying way, what is the one thing I would start doing differently tomorrow? Not some huge, impossible bucket list dream, a real, practical shift. Would I call my parent more? Would I finally have that honest talk? Would I give 1 hour each morning to my work before the world starts asking for things? Write it down. This isn't about getting ready for an end. It's about honoring the incredible gift of a middle that's happening right now. That simple act of writing can be the first step out from under that fear and into a life lived with clear-eyed intention. Money promises freedom, but it can become a cage, a subtle one. The 19th sign is confusing the tool for the purpose when the pursuit of wealth becomes the central plot of your life. The Stoics had a term for things like money, health, reputation. They called them preferred indifference. They're indifferent because they have no moral value in themselves. A pile of gold is neither good nor bad. It's just a pile of gold, but they're preferred because, all else being equal, it's reasonable to choose them. To prefer health over illness, security over poverty, the wisdom is in the ordering. These things are to be used, not to be served. They're instruments for a virtuous life, not the definition of it. Seneca was one of the richest men in Rome. He didn't preach poverty from inexperience. He wrote from inside the palace. He knew the temptation, the inertia, the quiet slavery luxury can bring. His warning was precise. Riches have enslaved more people than they have freed. The person who believes money is the answer hasn't asked the right question. And the question is, what will this money allow me to do or to be? If the answer is just to get more money, you're on a treadmill. You've mistaken the fuel for the destination. Financial security is a tool. It's a foundation. It allows you to focus on other things, your family, your growth, your contributions. It removes a layer of anxiety so you can think. But wealth accumulation as an end in itself, that's building a taller foundation with no house on top. You're just piling up bricks. Consider someone who takes a promotion. It doubles their salary. It also doubles their hours, their stress, their time away from home. They tell themselves it's for their family's future, but their children grow up with an absent parent. Their health deteriorates from the pressure. They trade the present reality of their relationships for a phantom future of security. And the tragedy is the enough point keeps moving. First it's the new car, then the bigger house, then the private school, the luxury vacation. the goalpost recedes. They're running a race where the finish line is always one step ahead. They are serving the money, believing it serves them, so there's an exercise, a quiet one. Define what enough looks like for you, not in vague terms but with specific numbers. What annual income lets you live securely without constant worry? What net worth would let you work on what you love, not just what pays? Write it down. This number is your tool. It's the amount that buys your freedom to focus on your purpose, to live with virtue. Any pursuit beyond that number needs to be examined. Is this extra effort moving me toward a richer character or just a richer bank statement? The aim is to reach a point where you own your money and it no longer owns you. Where you can look at your resources and see not a score but a set of possibilities for good. That's the shift. It turns wealth from a master back into a tool. And it reclaims all the time and energy you are spending in its service. A river doesn't flow for itself, and that last sign, maybe it's the deepest waste. Forgetting you're part of something larger. The Stoics had a word for that, sympatheia, this idea that everything is connected. To live just for your own gain, that's a kind of error. A misunderstanding of what you are. We're built to be social, built for cooperation. Marcus Aurelius, he wrote about this to himself all the time. He said, "What doesn't help the hive doesn't help the bee." You're a limb of a larger body, and if you cut yourself off from its welfare, you go numb, you become useless, you wither. The waste is the loss of meaning. Meaning that only comes from contributing something. A life turned entirely inward, focused on personal metrics of success, it becomes a small room, no windows. It might be comfortable, but the air gets stale. You can see it now in that modern isolation. The self-made narrative, the person who climbs the ladder, collects the accolades, builds the perfect brand, and feels a quiet hollowing out. They've optimized for acquisition, not for connection. Their success is a private island. They're the lonely king there. There's no shared joy in a victory no one else celebrates, no resilience in a crisis faced alone. For the Stoics, duty to the common good, that wasn't extra credit. It was the core curriculum for a meaningful life, to contribute, to be of use, to lighten someone else's burden. That's how you step out of the small story of the self into the larger story. It answers the question, what is all this for? So here's a final prompt, a quiet one. This week, identify one small, concrete way to be of service. Not a grand gesture, a genuine one. For your family, maybe listening to a story without looking at your phone. For a friend, a message of encouragement for no reason. For your community, picking up a piece of litter on a walk, buying a coffee for the person behind you. That single act is a thread. You're weaving it back into the fabric you came from. Remembering you're part of the river, not just a drop fighting the current. And in that remembrance, you reclaim the purpose of your time. You stop wasting your life. You start living it as a citizen of the world. These 20 signs aren't a list of failures. They're a map, one map showing a single territory, a life out of alignment. Out of alignment with your own reason and with the virtues that come from it. Wisdom, courage, justice, temperance. When you put them together, you see a pattern. It's a life spent in the past or the future, hostage to what other people think, chasing pleasures that don't satisfy, putting off what actually matters. It's motion without purpose, clinging to security, fearing change, even though change is what existence is. At the core, it's a life where the inner self gets lost in the noise of the outer world. The themes repeat because the mistake is fundamental. A lack of presence, focusing on the external, not the internal, action without purpose, or purpose without action. And resisting the way things are, seeing one of these signs in yourself, that's not a condemnation. It's the first step, the most empowering step. It means you've looked in the mirror. You've noticed the drift, and in noticing, you've already started to correct it. You've taken back the helm. Seneca, practical as ever, had a thought for this. He wrote, "Begin at once to live and count each separate day as a separate life. You don't have to fix everything at once. You don't have to relive yesterday. You just need to begin this day, this hour with intention. Pick one sign that resonated, the one that gave you that quiet ping of recognition, and today make one small, deliberate choice that moves against its current." That's how a wasted life ends. A purposeful one begins, not in a grand revolution, but in a single, conscious breath. We'd love to hear from you. In the comments, share which sign spoke to you most clearly. Your reflection might help someone else see their own path. If this was useful, consider subscribing. This channel is about turning ancient Stoic wisdom into practical steps for modern life. Think of it as a companion. Reminders, tools, conversations to help you live with more clarity, resilience, purpose. The road is easier walked together. Thank you for your time, and remember, today is a separate life. How will you live it?